I'm pretty excited here. That is so cool. Oh, shit. Wow.
If I was a betting man, I would bet my left ass cheek that Byron won't even notice.
Why am I doing this to myself? Why am I holding one of my favorite models to paint ever without any paint on it, intimidated and worried when I should be enjoying myself and painting what is possibly, in my opinion, one of the best models ever made by Games Workshop? In this tutorial, you're going to get to see me trying to do my highest quality work to date with dry brushing. The gloves are off to a degree. I've allowed myself much more time, and I'm going to try and achieve the best quality dry brushing I possibly can. I've got a really big aim for this one because I have to convince someone who's a far better painter than me that dry brushing can be fancy. It's not just for beginners, and that person is Zumikito's miniatures. So Simon is going to get my miniature. Obviously, he's going to judge it, and then perhaps not obviously, he's actually going to be enhancing my paint job, fixing it if he thinks he needs to, and finishing my miniature. And I've chosen a great unclean one. It's one of my personal favorites, and it's a fantastic miniature to try dry brushing on. So not only are you going to get to see me struggling, somewhat failing, mostly succeeding. I think you can let me know more on that. I'm going to give you 3 kind of pillars or cornerstones for you to up the level of your dry brushing. These can be applied to other painting actually, and I think that realization for me is part of me improving as a painter. There's some small little tips or tricks in there that people might not know of, just like avoiding certain primers and avoiding certain paint brands early in the painting process. And then there's other stuff that maybe goes in a little bit, and then over time you can practice more and more to really up your level as a painter. The format that we're going to be following is applying those 3 tips, showing some examples, illustrating them on screen. I'm going to then get to unbox the miniature, which I have in box, still sealed, I promise, I've been good. And I'm going to get to see what he has done to improve my miniature and to finish my miniature. I'm going to get to keep this miniature, that's great. I should do this more often. If you have anyone that you would like to see us collaborating with, pop the suggestion below. So, I don't know, do you want to see me working with another dry brusher? Do you want to see Peachy appearing or something like that? Do you want to see me working with a really fancy technical painter, a speed painter, or a contrast master? Pop whoever it is and the reasoning below. Make sure they're nice, obviously, because I have to send it away for judgment. So I'd like them to be nice. Anyway, let's jump in and take a little look at the 3 cornerstones that I've tried somewhat successfully to apply here to do my best dry brushing today. Tip number 1, and an absolute fundamental, is holding attention to paint properties. Not every paint is the same, not every brand is the same. There's variants within brands, but generally you're going to get different behavior between the different brands. This starts from your primer up. And one way that I would like you to think about this is, if you're going to do 5, 6, 7 stages on a model, which we did here, all of them are dry brushed. Whatever you do in your first 2 to 3 steps, you're going to still have to do like 3 or 4 steps past that. Anything in your foundation you need to be more careful of. This is why people base coat with primers. It's to get a really solid foundation that you can then enhance with your painting afterwards. If you make a mistake here, you're trying to fix it, you're not trying to enhance it. It makes as much sense to pay huge attention early on as it does in the finishing stages. You can make really obvious mistakes in the finishing stages in terms of color and, you know, slips and stuff like that. But if you're putting down a layer of lumpy paint, you've got to paint over that for several layers. Even if you're washing over it or something, it's still going to be there. So one thing that we're going to do is we're going to prime Chaos Black. It's a satin primer. It's not matte. It's not ultra matte. Both matte and ultra matte primers and paints in the early steps are going to give you a slightly more textured finish. That's why they look matte. They're reflecting the light differently. They'll absorb paint more. They'll make your painting look drier. And especially with something like dry brushing, that's something we've got to be conscious of and try to avoid. Hand in hand with this, rather than taking the moisture out of the paint with a paper towel, we're going to be introducing it in with a dampening pad. We're going to be putting a little bit of that in with the paint, and that's going to keep it smooth. It's going to help it go down nicely. And from the very early stages, you can see in the priming stage, I use quite a lot of water by our standards. It's not wet, but it's enough for it to go down smooth. And we're going to take a couple of steps if we need to, just to keep that foundation really nice, using either Citadel paints or Scale 75's Fantasy and Games rates, both of which are satin ranges. They've got a smooth, they're flat. The way that you should think of this water being used from the dampening pad is like oil in the engine of a car. So it's not a huge part or portion of everything that's going on, but it will keep everything going smoothly. It'll help paint leave your brush, keep your brush in good condition. And as we're going to be using the same brushes a lot throughout the paint process, at the beginning, keeping them happy and paint leaving them easily is really helpful, as well as keeping the miniature smooth, because we're going to have to put much more layers on top of that as we go. Now, the matte or ultra matte ranges, there's nothing wrong with them. You can use them, you just have to be a bit more careful. Personally though, what I like to do is I involve them kind of from the middle of the paint job towards the end, when actually we really need them, because they're going to jump onto those edges really easily and get those stark contrasts and highlights that we need to. If you're in doubt whether something's matte or not, often if it looks closer to white, you know, like a peach rather than a deep orange, they're both oranges, but one's going to have a lot more white in it. Those ones will be your more matte paints. Also, if you look at them when they're dried next to a light, they'll just be less reflective. And by taking these steps, we're making sure that we're in control of what's going on our miniature, or at least conscious of it, and that makes it much easier to see when things are going to go wrong. I'm laughing because the moment I knew I wasn't doing that, I then screwed up, coming up later, or maybe even being shown on screen now. So you want to be in control of your painting process. This is just like our dampening pad. We're controlling how much moisture is on the brush carefully, not too much, and if it's too little, we can go back for more. But the moment you oversaturate a brush and blob a great big spooge of paint onto your miniature, that's going to be noticeable, or streaks are noticeable. So it's all about controlling the process. Tip number 2, reference. So I'm going to keep this one fairly brief. A lot of people find the prospect of this intimidating. I've got a couple of quick tips to make it very easy for you with your reference. So we covered our paint's properties. We're going to be in control of those. We know what's going on. We're planning which ones we're going to use. Now, what if with reference, we just want to take all of the thought out of the process? There's a couple of ways that you can do this. They're going to make it much easier, and then you can just concentrate on how well your paint is going down, and hopefully these are going to give you a better idea of where you want to put it. One of these is to just use a color reference. This could be a photo, it could be a photo of the miniature, it could be a picture of a flower, it could be something from nature, it could just be a color swatch. You can take a reference from anywhere. I would thoroughly recommend having this on your table, behind your miniature where you're painting it, so it is constantly in your face and you cannot ignore it. If you want to work out how to match a color, especially if it's a digital reference, it's really easy. If it's in real life, it's still quite easy. If it's a digital reference, zoom right in on the bit that you want, like that purpley shadow of a miniature, zoom right in it on your phone, take your paint and just put it next to it and see if it looks close. Really, really simple. So that's your colors. What about your values? And what I mean by that is, if you turned a picture black to white, what is light and what is dark? This is really important. It suggests lighting. You can pull attention to certain areas like the face by having them brighter. You know, if something's under a chin, like mine here, it's going to be darker. My nose is going to be bright, as is my forehead, that type of stuff. Really, really simple way to do this. Prime your miniature black, and then just hold it under a light until you're kind of happy with it. I specifically chose an angle where the light was hitting it in places that were easy to reach to make my own job easier. Snap a picture and pop that behind your miniature while you're painting it. Paint by numbers, magic. So here we're now concentrating on our paint processes. Pretty easy. We've kind of, the properties we've held in mind and we've chosen paints carefully. We've got a color reference, we've matched it with that. We've got a value reference, so we know where stuff's going. So this makes it just as easy as copying someone else's version of the miniature. And in fact, it being black and white, I think can make it way easier, especially getting to tilt it around until you're happy with it and taking a photo, just freezing that and working from that. It'll take a load of the decisions out. And this is one of the hacks that incredible painters use all the time to make sure their painting is more realistic. Less to think about as well, right? Okay, so number 3, it's paint testing and awareness. It's incredibly important, and it's really, really easy as long as you're thinking about it. As long as you're kind of cognizant of this going on, you can avoid mistakes before they happen. We can see into the future. You literally can, because what you're going to do is you're going to take your brush, once you put some paint on it, you're going to test it on your texture palette, and according to what you see there, you're going to either go to your model, knowing that things are going to be fine with great confidence, or you're going to see that things are going to go wrong, therefore you won't go to your model. And when I didn't do this is when I made my biggest mistake on the miniature. So it's really simple. It's just about staying present with your painting and being aware of this, not just YOLOing it. Often when it looks like we are going YOLO on our model, we've tested it somewhere and we're super confident that things are going to be fine. Therefore we can go like this. It doesn't matter. If you've got smears coming out of your brush, if your brush is too heavily loaded, or if it feels like your brush has too much slightly matte paint on it, it'll feel a little bit sticky and you'll see that on your palette. It'll look a bit lumpy. Don't go to your miniature. Clean it carefully, not with a load of water, but a little. Clean it carefully and just start again. So there's a couple of things that you're going to be able to do by doing this. One is a smear test. Not like that, although do your smear test. So we're going to take our brush after applying paint to it. We're going to wipe it down our palette or on the back of our thumb or something like that. If it leaves streaks, it's likely to do that on your model, and that is what makes your dry brushing look bad or old school or lumpy or too heavy, or stops it from being texture based and is just putting paint down. So smear test number 1. Really easy, take a flattish section, press harder than you would do normally on the miniature. If you make a smear, you're at risk of doing that on your miniature. The next one is an edge test. Find a textured section of the palette, do whatever you like, do it in circles, do it up and down, left to right, whatever you fancy. If it's hitting edges and only edges, it's going to do that on your model. Simple. Most of this comes down to not overloading. So you'll also see that when we take paint with our brush, the brush is often completely, or should be, completely vertical. And we're not scooping the brush. It's not a spoon. We're not trying to spoon paint onto it. We're putting a little bit of moisture on the tip of the brush to help the paint leave easily. And then we're taking that brush vertically, getting paint just on the tip, working it around the tip, not into the body of the brush, testing it. And if that goes okay, then we go to our model. The more you do this, the more it'll become second nature. And also the more it kind of is wrapped up with cleaning your brush, using the dampening pad and other stuff that will keep your paint smooth and also help your brushes last forever. Mine are a good like 2 or 3 years old that you see on the channel, kind of evidenced by the fact that some of them are about half the length that they used to be and still just about going strong. Some are due retirement though at this stage. They've had a good life. We're in a slightly different setting to normal. The staff have gone home. I needed some more space, so I'm in the workshop. This is what you wear in a workshop or a warehouse at this time of year. Shout out to the warehouse peeps. I've got a box here. Let's see what a professional painter has done to improve my painting and my dry brushing or to enhance it. 17 levels of security. All right, the moment of truth. Appropriate amounts of bubble wrap. So I sent it away in bits. It's not broken. It has arrived back in bits. I'm presuming this is going to be a sword or something. I'm pretty excited here. It is a sword. Oh, cool. So he's gone NMM. He's gone with copper. That's really nice. And he's done the boils in a bright yellowy. That's pretty cool. Oh, I want to see this over the mini now. So it's holding it like that way up. This is the top side. That's super nice. Some verdigris as well. Always a fan of the verdigris. That's the look of painting done by someone who is a better painter than me. It's pretty cool to see that on something that I've started. Oh, shit. Wow. He's polished that. He has polished that so much. Oh, wow. So he's highlighted over my painting. That's really cool. We have a mix of my dry brushing with his highlighting over it, but he's managed to do it in a way with some glazing. I'm guessing I need to get this under better light. That's really cool. He's even fixed my problematic section from earlier on in the tutorial. Wow, the back looks insane. Really, really, really cool. He's used such a nice deep purple on the tentacles as well. Oh, it's amazing. This is really cool. I should do this more often. I like it when people fix my painting for me. The nails color, he's gone with like an off limey green as well, which is really cool on the hands. I got worried then. We're missing a very tiny little, oh Jesus, that looks amazing. That is so cool. So we've got the arm with it's such a distinctively shaped weapon. Oh, brilliant. Wow, that's a focal point. That's such a focal point. I've not even seen the head yet. This is nodding behind the camera. He's worked over my work here and still it's held up to be pretty smooth, even with multiple layers of mine painting and his painting on it. And the fact that he has gone traditional painting with the highlights on the MM means that they're pretty punchy and pretty bold and stuff like the tentacles and the individually highlighted innards. Where's the head? Where's the head? Polish my horns a little bit as well. He's kept the cut. Oh God, those tentacles are so good. I need to build his mouth for maggots. It was already full, but he's highlighted them beautifully. So let's see what the mini's got as far as focal points. This is so weird to be, obviously I've spent a lot of time around this miniature. I think he's done more work than I'm even realizing because he's pretty subtle with it. He's really, really deep underloaded the colors. That looks nuts. And he's kept it desaturated around the face, apart from that little eye and a half popping out and the maggots. So, so cool. That is nuts. So I guess a wrap up of the techniques he's used. He's just really good at specifically painting with the right colors. The areas where I don't think I have chosen like perfect colors. He's kind of harmonized things nicely, but just by balancing it out. I'm gonna have to pick his brains on what he's actually done because there's some stuff going on here that I'm enjoying, but I'm not fully understanding. Even the choice on the belly, things just look more balanced. Oh, I love the purple he's got on the tentacles. Done. All right, so I think it's pretty clear from my reaction there what I thought, but let's jump in and see a slightly longer version of what we got going on, including me guessing the changes that Simon would make as I paint this model. Of course, if you want to see Simon painting it properly, then check out his video. That'll be linked to the end of this one and in the description. Let's jump in and see what we did kind of in a more protracted fashion, including my mistake and just how obvious the difference is between me not following my own advice and following my own advice. So yeah, we've got a quick juxtaposition between what happens if you ignore the principles and properties of the paint and you don't test, and then if you do the opposite to that Same paints, same sequence, just paid attention. Went way better. Let's go. I have done my test and I think we're okay. I'm pretty pleased with how the arm looks. Some areas on this model are just a bit easier to paint than others with dry brushing, and a lot of that is access like I can get at the top of his bicep. So that's really helped. What has also helped is, as normal, I'm using some type of a reference. And what I've done here is when he was just nice and shiny with Chaos Black, I took a couple of pictures of my light positioned fairly carefully. What I've tried to do here, access is the big thing on this model, is I've, even though I've left it so his bits can come off, there's still like armpits and wrists and the stuff that are going to be in the way. I've tried to find a position where a lot of the highlights are in upwards facing areas, which is fairly natural anyway, but then I've tilted it until they're in upwards facing areas that I can get to. It's not necessarily right along the top of his arms, but I've actually got one at the front and one at the back. You can see this line here. So that line there is exactly what I have attempted somewhat successfully to copy. So yeah, that's the reference I'm working from. And yeah, I also had kind of used that as a starting point, and the paints that I have decided on, I tried to keep a fair bit of GW for satin finish paints, because that'll make it's easy to not get chalky. But there's 2 Skeleton T5 paints in here because I like their colours. So roughly the sequence we've got is a mix of all of these, actually all of these for the beginning, that one. So basically what I want to do is carefully look at what we've got up there and kind of put something in place. Like I say, I fully plan on going over this. It doesn't matter if it's got good coverage, it's just popping some stuff in the way. Even if I obscure it, it really doesn't matter too much. Still debating whether I should pull his head and bits off, but I'm going to leave them on for as long as possible. I probably will have to remove them at some point. As you can see, we're still, we're trying to be fancy, but some habits don't change. Top of his hands, make sure I dilute it. I don't want to be putting on unnecessary texture. And then all along the top of his arm and the front, like the other one that we had. And he's got this massive, great big lumpy bit here, which would be in shadow behind the horn, but I'm not going to worry about that. If Simon wants to paint some cast shadows like a badass, he can, but it's a little bit too fancy for us. I want to make sure that I've got these down. So they're the bits that I'm going to do for now. I do think maybe I should pull his head off. I've kind of painted it on. Well, maybe this is not optional now. Doesn't look the same at this point, does it? But access is way easier. Might pull his arm off as well. Already coming up against those access issues I mentioned. It's bad shape, that. Happens behind shields a lot. Let's really dilute it. And I'm going to stipple in. Need to dilute it a lot more than that. As I shine up in Bourne steps, he's going to make all the difference. Actually, tilt it, it's easier for me on camera. I might swap down. Yeah, I'm going to swap to a smaller brush. Much better. Those final steps are really important. Still ashamed that that happened, but it is what it is. That one's way smoother. Sorry if you can hear screaming and glitter and explosions and sirens. Pride's on in Manchester. We've got to a point, and I'm going to be honest, we're going to show the footage, but a bit of this has not gone right. And it's not gone right to the extent that I'm going to record my painting on another bit of it. So we'll show you what has gone wrong. I'll explain why it went wrong. It's something that I feel I should explain, but also I'm going to show you how to paint it and avoid that happening. But we always like to include the mistakes. So this is the context for my mistake. Wish that hadn't happened, but it's happened, and I've got to send it off to someone else. It makes it feel so much different. So yeah, I'm going to, let's go. Let's prepare the paints. This is really important. There's a fair bit of setup here. What I'm looking to do is make it as easy as possible for me to be able to work fast and conveniently. So first of all, I want to decide where my areas of highlight are. I don't have to put much effort or thought into that because I've got a photo to copy. So the areas on the photo that are lighter is here. Just water that I'm putting on here, here, obviously. That's about it, really. They're the big areas. So let's try and get to the color we want. Probably a bit too much black, but we do need to make quite a lot. We're doing quite a large area. Got our previous ones on the palette, so we can put my brush next to it. See, just need a little bit more. Now that should be quite close to our base coat color, hopefully. Keep things pretty wet, especially in the beginning stages. Do a little test, get really thinned down. My hand's going to be very colorful by the end of this. I want to keep the brush wet to keep the paint kind of leaving easily. So our color check has gone well. We've done a good job of matching. Always nice. So now basically we can start adding in greens. Whenever I'm taking more water, it's going to mix it more with my previous layer of paint. It's also going to dilute it a little bit more and make it softer, so just that little bit more forgiving. Like I said, this big one is a bit of it's a bit of an oddity. Hopefully we can make it work. It is hidden under and behind his weapon, but yeah, might as well try and hit these two while I'm here. I think I'm going to have difficulty not hitting them anyway, so I'll just roll with it. Okay, layer 1. We're good. Now this is the bit where I have been screwing up the others, because when I take a little bit more of these scale 75 paints proportionally, things get a bit more matte, and that's kind of where we get our issues. So I'm going to keep it dilute, and I'm actually going to involve a little bit of moot green, and we're going to be overly cautious. Even if it takes multiple attempts, I'm fine with that. So proceeding with caution. What we're hoping for is that we can just kind of globally buff up stuff from the angles that we want it to be the brightest. So we're hitting everything that sticks out the most, not necessarily like more from top to bottom, because it's all the top. And as we get lower down the piece, we are going to be using directional stuff more to hit the tops of areas more than the bottom. Soon you'll see, rather than going back for more paint, it's going well actually, and go back for more moisture. It's really important, and that'll help the paint that is on the brush that is getting slightly drier, just evaporating. That'll help the paint that is on there leap. I'm going to keep working until the brush tells me it can't get any more paint to leave, which is coming up. This model's brilliant for holding. I can take a really firm grip on it because he's got a hole in his butt.
Lovely bit of phrasing.
Let's make it a little bit more, slightly lighter version of that mix. Bring in some of our previous color, but more of the moot. Nice, okay, I think we're good there. Always start on the bits that I want to be the brightest. I don't think I have to take a sword off, but I might do. I might do in the future. Again, at the top, as long as I can reach where I need to. Circles are fine, I want to hit everywhere. And then as we get lower down, I'll be going kind of top down, a bit more directional. More moot. Now we need to be careful here, because what I'm going to do is I'm just using a bit of moot, and I'm going to really heavily work it in, dilute it, and it's going to mix with the previous paints that I had in the brush. We're jumping up quite a lot in terms of color here, so what I want to do is make sure that I go in soft, and I go in and I'm going to start streaky, dilute it even more. As you get to this stage, the reason why I was about to say you have to be careful is because of mistakes like that. You're gonna make more of a difference to the model more quickly at this stage with brighter colors, so it's easier to make a more noticeable mistake. You're probably going to make mistakes the same amount, but it's just when you're working with darker colors, they're not nearly so obvious. See, I'm holding my model, I'm moving it a lot, and basically I'm holding it at whatever angle is going to make the task that I'm currently doing the easiest. Firm grip, you do not want your model wobbling about. That is going to give the opposite of high quality results. Okay, looking pretty cool. This is looking good actually. I'm really happy with this. I'm going to clean my brush thoroughly, and we're going to use what is pure moot green. We're going to use that carefully, but it is still going to mix with the previous colors. I'm going to be really careful, again, for the streaking reasons. We've got moot down, pure, nearly on the model, so as long as I'm careful with where I put it, shouldn't be too much of an issue. I'm going to start restricting the sections that I put it down heavily in. So they're the ones that I want to look like it's reflecting off. And then for the rest of the model, sticking to kind of top down where relevant. And what you should start seeing, hopefully, is that I'm going to shrink, and it's going to be like around here, where it's meant to be reflecting that I concentrate my kind of my next steps that are coming up. Now our next one, which is Garsnick, is a little less bright and saturated. Good. Careful, buffing, starting in the center of those zones where we want to be our lighter zones. Can also catch areas we think we've missed. previous steps. Okay, mostly Scarsnick now, but still mixing with our previous step. Cool, nice. This is looking great. It's coming across on camera, but this is probably some of the better dry brushing I've done. Shows all you have to do is think about it and not rush, which is the normal advice, so I should just follow my own. Okay, looking good. Make sure we haven't missed anywhere, because it will stand out if we have. And make sure we top to bottom on the other sections. We have a decision coming up. We need to step in as few steps as possible to quite a bright colour here. So I need to make a decision about my brush size. I'm going to clean this one first. I'm going to look at the areas I need to hit, the effects that I want. I think what I'll do is I'll clean this fairly thoroughly, and I'll do a kind of all over efficient one with this. It's a bigger brush. It'll do a lot of things a lot better. And then I'll jump down to a smaller brush, maybe even 2 sizes smaller. I'll do slightly heavier kind of specific applications. Pure Scarsnick. Whenever I take paint, guys, people think I take a lot heavier than I do. I take very lightly and then I use very heavily. People tend to do it the other way around. 90% of demos, people scoop the paint up and they've already started wrong, and then they try and be really gentle on the model to counter it. I'd rather set out my brush well and then not have to be as careful and perfect with my painting. Top down. Some bits, you're just gonna have to make the decision. Do you wanna hit sideways unrealistically? Or do you wanna hit top down and barely have them be textured? So this one here, I'm gonna make a decision that the light could be hitting it from the front, just so I get to make the most of the detail on the model. See, now I'm starting to suffer because I can't reach into areas because of the size of the brush, so that's the model telling me to drop down. Bit more water, help what's on there leave. Obviously, making it wet is going to mix it more with the previous paint. And then make sure you don't miss any toes or whatever. I might do his toes black in the end or something. Not purely aesthetically, just to make up for the fact that I've kind of missed painting them. Okay, I think we're going to step down in brush after I've caught my areas that I know that I've missed. Right, scary step. This is a pastel. It's got a lot more white in it, proportionally, and it's a more matte paint. It's going to do several things. We need to try and counter one of them that isn't making stuff look chalky. One way to do that is to be more careful, to dilute it more. The other one is to mix it with the previous color that we've just used. It really helps that previous color is a GW paint, so it's a bit satiny anyway. So when I take my paint, I drag it away from the brush, not in. That's to make sure that if I did take too much, I'm already trying to fix the fact. I don't think I did, but it's just very good practice to get into. Set up the brush from all aspects, a little bit of water, careful, it's a smaller brush. So when you go to a smaller brush, you can't be as gung-ho because you don't want to saturate it, right? This is appropriate for Nagel. Don't know if the camera caught the fly landing on it. Top down, utmost care. A bit more dilation needed. So that observation is because it was just a bit grainy. You got various things that you can play with to try and keep that quality. Often this is going to happen if you jumped up, aggressively in color, it's more likely to happen. So if I mix it more with our previous color, it's going to be more subtle. All right, we're done. That turned out amazingly. I had so much fun painting something to a slightly higher level. And what I want you to think about here is, as evidenced by my mistake, it's not necessarily like being incredible, it's just being a little bit more methodic with things. So I did exactly the same steps, but didn't screw them up. It went better. So you just have to be a little bit more present with the painting. The effort went in before, in the considerations, and then while we were doing it, just in sticking the course and not breaking our own rules. Pretty easy, really. The giveaway for this one is going to be for the best suggestion with someone else you would like to see us collaborating with in a similar video. Let us know the thoughts that you have on this format of video. I think it's really interesting. Hopefully you do too. and the 5 previous winners from our 100k subs giveaway video will be being announced at the bottom of the screen now. It goes without saying, check out Simon's video. It's not just how he did stuff, it's why he did stuff. You'll also get to see whether my guesses were correct about the things that he would do and why he'd do them. So go and check out his stuff. He also owes me his left butt cheek, so go and check out his video for that and a few more fetish jokes. Difficult to keep a straight face. I don't know how he manages. He's a superstar anyway. His content's super good. That's why I asked him if he'd pay my model for me. If you're not a subscriber, please consider subscribing. We'll catch you in the next video.